All right. Hey, welcome, NEDRP family and followers. My name is Kevin Curtis. I have my amazing best friend, Denise Holliday, and one of our amazing educator consultants, Donald Bolger, with us today. We just felt like today was a great time to have a courageous conversation based on yesterday's post. We hope that you were following us and you saw that Martin Luther King Jr. quote. And so today we're just going to take that conversation to a next level and have a courageous conversation between some family members.
So when I see that quote and I think about that quote, I think about an injustice to one is a threat. For me, that means if one injustice takes place, it's like a domino effect. Then the next person thinks it's okay for that to happen. And then we see ourselves in a world of not caring for one another, not valuing one another, and not seeing one another. We have to get rid of that threat of injustice so that justice can rise up.
Man, that is one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Martin Luther King. And I think the problem we have is our definition of justice is different. And so because our definition of justice is different, we have a problem when we say it's unjust. And so until we have a clear understanding of justice, injustice is going to continue to happen. And so using that quote as far as injustice, and in one place, you have a threat to justice everywhere. I mean, it's so powerful. I think we really need to have a better understanding of what justice means.
You know, when you first recommended the quote yesterday and we started talking about, I just kept coming into my mind, like, it's so crazy that a quote that could come back, right, from the time that he was making a huge difference in our society and speaking aloud. And then you look today in 2020 and you realize, like, it's still applicable.
You know, actually, I've experienced many, but in particular, I want to speak on a time when I was in college and junior college it was. So I attended 2 years, and every day for 2 years, and this is my injustice, every day for 2 years, I was called the N-word, and I can't even say the word. I was called the N-word. And I think the unjust part of that was that I went to my professors and I said, hey, this is going on every day. Like, I need help. Can you stop this? Help me stop this. Let's have this conversation. And what I was told was, just ignore it. And so as I processed that and I thought, just ignore it. What does that mean? Like, okay. So for 2 years, I tried very hard to ignore it. And then there was a point where I was voted homecoming queen. And this was year 2, the end of year 2. And as I'm walking through my dorm room, the female that I have to pass her dorm room every day. That's how I was getting it every day. Said, I can't believe they let that in when homecoming queen. And in that moment, all of that 2 years of just ignoring it came to the surface. And I exploded. And I was angry. I was hurt. I didn't ask to be homecoming queen. I didn't ask y'all to sign me up for that. I'm just trying to graduate and do my best and make my parents proud. And yes, I was very angry. I was hurt, devastated. In that moment, what I thought was, dang, I'm really not valued. And I realized in that moment, I wasn't valued, seen or heard by her and her friends because of the color of my skin. And that rocked me to my core.
I would have to say that I have quite a few experiences of injustice. I think one that would resonate with the current situation of today is my experiences with police. I don't think from middle school until I was out of school that I ever had a positive interaction with a police officer. One experience that I remember the most is I'm out of school. I didn't graduated. I'm in college, taking classes, working a graveyard shift, going to school full time during the day, to where literally I only had 3 hours of sleep before I got up to go to work, and that was my routine. And one day on the way to work, I got pulled over by an officer, um, and he was very forceful in the way that he spoke through the microphone, gun already drawn. Um, Literally, I'm at my job. I worked at a gas station. I worked a graveyard shift. I didn't pull up to my normal parking spot, and um, basically, long story short, pulled a gun out, and through the whole process, treated me like a criminal. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't doing anything but going to work. And when I asked why was I pulled over, you know, what's going on, I received no communication whatsoever. I was slammed on the ground, um, hands behind my back with the handcuffs, and literally surrounded. At my job, I'm embarrassed. I'm now late to get to work. I have no idea why I'm on this ground and why there is at least 10 officers there with all their lights on and all of them are out and all of them are talking to each other and no one's talking to me. And so I felt violated. I was afraid. Um, I was angry. And all I really needed from them was to explain to me what I did wrong. And so I truly felt like at that moment, that was a true injustice for me with officers. That was like the tip of my experience with officers.
You know, when I look back and I have to kind of reflect on my journey, how it led me to here, I had no idea that when I first got introduced into restorative discipline back at Ed White in 2012, all of a sudden I'm realizing that I am in a cog of a systemic approach that is part of the school to prison pipeline, that I am suspending kids at a rate that's higher than any other campus in the district. I'm recognizing that I'm not building relationships with my kids. I'm starting to see some of the injustices come to the surface. And what was crazy about it is I was part of that systemic approach of these students. And I think my experience was an aha and awakening, but it was also one of those things like, oh my God, I'm a part of this system. And I didn't even realize it nor recognize it until I started like getting to know my kids, like going to their homes and making connections with them. And so, you know, people may wonder, how did I get from public school to here? And I realistically, it was through that restorative lens. That restorative lens allowed me to magnify the injustice of the school system with exclusionary consequences and the traditional consequences that were ineffective, particularly for our Black and Brown students. And it just showed me I'm part of the problem. And I couldn't believe that the injustice that I was not only witnessing, was participating in and not even aware of it. So I was devastated. I could not imagine being in your shoes. I just felt floored, devastated, lots of like almost guilt, but also at the same time, like I had no clue. And so I think the things that we're talking about nowadays, we have somewhat of a clue.
If I use my experience with police officers, I have to say what saved me that night was a relationship with an officer. Before before that moment, there was no positive thought or relationship with any police officer. Anytime a police officer approached me or came by me, defense system came up, emotions of anger was there. And so working at a graveyard shift and having an officer who stopped in there every night of his shift to drink coffee and to play lottery tickets, and would take anywhere from 15 minutes to 45 minutes till he finished his coffee and to see if he won something, this gentleman would just have a conversation with me. He was a Caucasian gentleman, an older Caucasian gentleman, and he would just ask me questions about my future because I was young. Here I am, 19, 20 years old, and he's just having a conversation with me. And through that relationship, he helped me to understand their system because he was trying to get me to become an officer. And through our conversations, I began to see police officers differently. And that particular night, no one talked to me. 10 officers having a conversation with each other. And this officer came on shift, came to get his coffee and his lottery tickets. And he was the first person to come over to me and sit down with me and say, son, what did you do? And I'm like, no one is talking to me. I have no idea. Let me go find out. When he finished finding out and he had a conversation with them, by the time he finished his conversation, he came over and said it's a mistaken of identity. They thought that you was the person who robbed your car. Looks the same as the identification of the car that was in the robbery. You can go to work. From our relationship, I was released. And so if I could have one thing that I would do, I would start in my community and start having a conversation with my local police chief and figure out how we can embed a training that has equity and begin to have courageous conversations so that police trainings could include the idea of seeing people as people.
I think that I learned the most impactful lesson about how to have conversations about difficult things from my son. He had a similar experience at his school, and I remember being that parent. And I'm gonna keep it 100. I was that Black mama. Don't mess with my babies. Look, I didn't know what I felt from what I experienced in college. It stuck to me like the clothes I wear every day. But my son taught me. He was only in first grade. When he went through something similar, he looked up at me and he said, Mom, it's okay. I'm gonna teach him how to be a friend. And he was right. At the end of the year, there was a celebration party that went on in that classroom. And that young man, and all the kids, the teacher asked all the kids, what did you enjoy about first grade? And I remember that young man that he had the experience with looking at my son and saying, Cameron taught me how to be a friend. But what was most impactful about that moment, as I looked at his parents and their heads dropped, that let me know that my son had a conversation and he went through that work. He's a kid. And so as I reflect back to my college years, ever since that moment, I think all the time, man, if I could just have that moment to have the conversation with that young lady that treated me so horrible and devalued me every day for 2 years, I would say to her, hey, I'm Denise. I love people. I love queso. Get to know me before you judge me. It's the conversation that must take place in order for us to move forward.
Man, I totally agree. I think if I could ask people if one thing that could be impactful, I think it's just to reflect. And the reason being is I'm not asking people to do things that would take them so outside of their comfort zone and to do things. But for me, the only way, once I recognized that the system was broke and that I was a cog in the wheel, the only thing I felt compelled to do was leave the system. And I'm not asking people to quit their jobs, but I had to do something. And I think that the only way that I knew that I could make an impact is, okay, I made an impact with, a few hundred kids here. But now I need to take this epiphany and this light on, and this bright light of recognizing that we can make a difference in schools, and we got to take it somewhere else, right? Which was planting that seed in another school and then going to all the service centers and training and doing. And so I felt like the only thing that I felt compelled and convicted to do was to start a movement. And the movement included listening and learning and having other points of view and really understanding, like, not talking the talk, but walking the walk. In other words, we have to live with a relationship-centered heart. We have to learn how to get along and have to see our differences and our point of views. And so for me, my call to action was, or my impactful moment was for me to just do something other than just sitting behind my desk and continuing to suspend kids at a rate that was higher than anyone else and just try to continue to get up scores. And I just couldn't do that anymore. And so I would say as we start to think forward, the conversation that we chose to have today was very intentional. You know, in fact, I mean, we are the best of friends, and the three of us chose to do this because we wanted to make sure people know how comfortable you are. You know, and I don't even know it, but Denise, you know, what's my nickname, Denise? What nickname?
White chocolate.
White chocolate, which actually came from your mom, did it not?
It came from my mom when you went to her house and visited. You showed up, and I was like, oh, I think we were doing a training at the Regent Art Service Center here in Austin. And when you left, my mom was like, girl, he might be white, but he is chocolate. He got chocolate in him. That man is so full. And so she was like, that's white chocolate. His name might be Kevin, but he white chocolate to me.
I have, you know, so I give you a nickname as Circle Mama, and I ended up with white chocolate, but I will take it. I have learned so much over my 50 years to try to understand other people's points of views and things that we go through. And I think today, the only thing that we wanted to bring to life was to quote, and to let you know that we do see you, we do hear you, we do value you, and we stand with you, right? And if we have one call to action that we would ask is for you to find somebody that does not look like you. Is that right, Denise? What's going to be our call to action?
So a call to action, I'll say, so I say I've come full circle. So in college, there was a white woman who tried to steal my value. And I knew that I was valuable, but sometimes deep down inside, you don't really know. And then as I became an adult in this work, there was a white man tapping me on my shoulder, continuously saying, you are valuable. And the only way that could have taken place was the many conversations that we had that might have been uncomfortable, that might have been elevated voice. We must have those conversations. And I thank you, Kevin, for those difficult conversations. I thank you for hanging in there with me. I thank you for those times that I did judge you. I did. I was guilty of judging you. And that wasn't fair. But all I needed was just to get to know you. And so I'm asking you, if you're listening to this, if you're one of our followers, I'm asking you to take the time and have a conversation with someone who may not look like you, who may not be from your culture, who may not practice the same religion as you, who may not love the same person you love. Have that conversation. Get to know them. And I ask you to do that on pause. Pause. Have that conversation. Get to know them with the absence of judgment, with grace shining through.
I love you guys. Thank you for the courageous conversation. And I love the fact that we always come together to try to make things better, and that we're trying to make an impact the best that we can, even during this most difficult time. I just thank you for taking your time today, and hopefully we can make a difference in somebody's life. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.